If you have watched the Vision Sunday sermon, or it's not a sermon, it's just kind of like an info kind of thing, actually, on the theme for 2021 and last days living. If not, just let me say that this idea is that we need to know how to live in a culture that is not a Christian culture, okay? I put up yesterday just kind of like a little advertisement kind of thing, marketing thing for this this sermon series that we're starting today, this new one called Living in Babylon. And in that little marketing thing, I brought forth the idea that Christianity is, or that America is no longer a Christian nation. We can go back and debate about whether or not we were ever a Christian nation. One side of the argument is that, yes, we were a Christian nation. The other side of the argument is that, no, we weren't, because a majority of the founding fathers were actually deists, not Christians. Regardless of that argument, Christianity has been the prevailing religion of America for 244 years-ish, if my math is right in my head. Christianity has been the prevailing religion, and Christians have actually had the majority in the nation for a very long time. We don't have that anymore. America is no longer a Christian nation. As a matter of fact, I don't even think I'd put the term post-Christian to it. I would say that America is a pre-pagan nation. Go back through the Old Testament, and you will find a common theme when you look at the different gods that were worshipped among the nations. Look at some of the practices that they held, and take a brushstroke and go through some of the practices that are common in America now. You will find very, very quickly that America partakes in a lot of lesser God worship. It's actually quite prevalent, even through the church. This slide that I've got up here for the, and I don't know that you can see it or not on here. Maybe you can see it a little bit better on Facebook. But this is an artist's rendition of Babylon. And we need to know how to live in a Babylonian culture. We need to know how to live in a pagan culture. Up here is this artist's rendition, but if you look very closely off over here, see where it says Chosen Daniel, just off to the left, you will see a faded image of the Statue of Liberty. Because the reality is that America is a lot like the Babylon of old. The fact of the matter is that the world, a pagan culture, the world in general can be very, very cruel, right? Because think about like this. When you go for a job interview, some of you, it's been a while since you've been on a job interview, right? But you remember being coached, right? Back in the day when you were back in high school and maybe in college, we were all coached on how to go for a job interview, right? You have to dress appropriate for the job, right? You need to have the look down. You need to have the right knowledge. If you've got a degree in ministry, you're not going to go apply to be an RN. Like, really? Even if you manage to get an interview, which I don't ask how that would happen, you don't have the right knowledge. You just don't. You would fail that interview like crazy. You have to sell yourself. That was one of the first things I was ever told, especially in culinary school. You need to sell yourself as the best. You need to learn how to sell yourself. And you need to impress. First impressions make a difference. Even when ministers go to apply for churches. I have seen this in the I've been in more interviews than just the 4 churches that I've had. I've actually been on both sides of the ministerial interview process. I've been on the side as a congregation member at Riverton. I wasn't on the search committee, but we were a part of the congregation that was a part of that process. And we've also been on the ministerial side. The problem, especially with the ministerial search, is that everybody's afraid to show their bad side. Churches are afraid to air their troubles, and ministers are afraid to share their shortcomings. We try to put on our best side, and the trouble is that we might be actually better off if we didn't. That was the one thing when we came here, was that there needs to be more reality when we interview. I ask the right questions and dig into all of this and get a better feel for what's actually going on, not only with the church, but give them, when we came here, give them a better sense of where we are. And some of our shortcomings. I'm not afraid to admit that youth and children are not my strong suit. They just aren't. Not my strong suit whatsoever. And I am more than happy to delegate that responsibility to somebody that can do it better than me. As a matter of fact, just as a note, if you're a leader, a good leader recognizes where they are short and they hire the best person to put into that position. You know where you're short, and you delegate that responsibility to somebody who is strong, because you want somebody who compliments you. And more times than not, employers are actually afraid to get somebody in a position where they're better than they are. So they will hire less than qualified people so that they don't lose their job. It happens all the time, as a matter of fact. I used to do that in the restaurants. You live and learn. You don't want the fool in there. You want the good guy. You want the guy who's strong. Schools. Remember back to elementary school. Remember back to high school, junior high. Cliques. It's a popular crowd. I grew up in a pretty big high school. So it was the popular crowd. It was the band geeks. It was the jocks, the nerds, the burnouts. The burnout crowd is they wear all black and they walk around on a cloud of smoke, as in drug smoke, that kind of stuff. And then you have the untouchables. You have in my high school, my class, we graduated with 316 kids, and there were probably, somebody whistled, whoever that was. 316 kids, there were about 5 kids, I can sit here and name you each one of them, who were untouchable. You didn't talk to them, you didn't go near them, except for me and a group of my friends, which is probably why I was not a part of the popular crowd, because I wasn't afraid to talk to anybody. Part of my personality, I just who I am. Communities have the same issue, right? Communities, there's especially in smaller communities, there's the old blood, the people who've been there forever. You have the newcomers, like us. We're newcomers into Tologa. We've been here 4.5 years, but still we're still fairly newcomers. You have transients. You have people who are here for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and they're gone. You have the users, the people who are always needing help from somebody. It's rich versus poor, status. My particular hometown, East Peoria had 20,000 people, 22,000 people, 22,500, I think, by the time I was in high school. If you didn't have the right last name, you didn't make the basketball team. I learned that in junior high very quickly. I didn't have the right last name. I didn't make the basketball team. And I tried out once, and I never tried out again. Because, why? What's the point? Because there were kids that made the basketball team that I knew I was better than, but yet they made the team anyway. I learned very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. Churches even do this very same thing. The world can be cruel. There is a story. There are two different churches that did this. There was a pastor that dressed up as a homeless man. At one church, at the first church, the pastor dressed up as a homeless man and sat outside. Was a new pastor, had interviewed through the process with the elders. The elders were on board with this. The very first Sunday that he went in, he was dressed as a homeless man. He sat outside for a little bit. He went inside. He sat in the very back of the church. Nobody talked to him. Not one person shook his hand, said hi, welcome to the church. The elders got up and introduced the pastor, and he came shuffling in from the back of the congregation dressed as a homeless man. And the congregation's collective mouths dropped. And he got up and preached a sermon how the church is not being the church. Another church did this, and he sat outside and was surprised because he got he got money, he got a Bible, he got somebody, people were praying with him, bringing him food. One church versus another. He got up into the congregation, they didn't know that it was him, and he got up into the pulpit and said, "This is what we are supposed to do." Now, some people did walk by him and didn't say a word, but he said, in general, this is what a church is supposed to be doing. We evaluate whether or not we like it, whether it's a job interview or whether we in our communities, in churches, in our schools, it doesn't make a difference. We judge and evaluate based on worldly standards. We do. We base everything that we judge off of our worldly standards and off of our past. The sermon series, Living in Babylon, starts off with the idea of chosen. We're going to be in Daniel in this series. We're going to be in Daniel 1 this morning. Next week will be Daniel 2, and we'll be 5 weeks. And then the last week there will be 2 chapters combined. But let me read Daniel 1. We're going to be in 1 to 7 here in this first part, and then we'll go on to 8 to 21. 1 to 7 says this: In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. The Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Jerusalem, into his hand, along with some of the vessels of the house of God, and brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasury of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of his officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family, and of the nobles, youths in whom there were no defect, who were good-looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had ability for serving in the king's court. And he ordered him to teach them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans. Then the king appointed for them a daily ration from the king's choice food and from the wine which he drank, and appointed that they should be educated 3 years, at the end of which they were to enter the king's personal service. Now among them from the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Then the commander of the officials assigned new names to them, and to Daniel he assigned the name Belteshazzar. Hananiah, Shadrach, Mishael, Meshach, and Azariah, Abednego. Daniel starts off here with the idea of going through and talking about Judah being taken captive. Let me go through a bit of history real quick. In the year 605 BC to 581 BC, there were about three, if I'm remembering right, there were about three different sieges on Jerusalem in which the Israelites were carried away into captivity to Babylon. It began in about 605. 597 was the first exile of the royal family and the highfalutin people, the nobles and the royals and all that. They were carried away in 597. You will find the blood curse of Jeconiah. We are going to address this actually in 1 year. We're going to address this next Christmas about the blood curse of Jeconiah and why Joseph could not have been the biological father of Jesus. It's not possible because of the blood curse of Jeconiah. If you're curious before 1 year, look it up. Look it up. It's there. It's there. The blood curse of Jeconiah is the reason that Joseph cannot be the biological father of Jesus. Jesus is the Son of God. Okay? But yet he's still of the line of David. Because Mary was of the line of David. That's the synopsis in short. Daniel, more than likely, was a part of this first wave of exiles in 597. Okay? Daniel, at the end of chapter 1, it says that Daniel served until the first year of Cyrus. Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BC. 537 was when the temple was began to be rebuilt. Remember over the last sermon series, I said that prophecy is being fulfilled before our very eyes, and I said that the nation of Israel was a nation for the first time in 2,500 years. That exact number is actually 2,545 years from the time Israel was taken into captivity. They were not a nation. They were a conquered people until 1948 when they became a nation again. 2,545 years, Israel was a conquered nation and scattered among the wind. And now, before our very eyes, prophecy is actually being fulfilled. That's why I said, if you don't like Bible stories, you better start liking them because you're a part of one. Just saying. Prophecy is being fulfilled, and even now, Israel is being gathered back to their homeland. In verses 2 to 7, Nebuchadnezzar goes off and he chooses the Israelites. Did you notice the list of what he chose people by? Royal family and nobility was the first qualification. This is why I think Daniel was part of that first wave. Royal family and nobility. No defects. In other words, no physical defects. I had a teacher who had his actual arm was like about that long, and it never grew past, like he was like the age of 5, 6, 7 years old. So his arm literally looked like a 5-year-old's arm. No defects. Autism would have been a no-no. Cerebral palsy would have been a no-no. Down syndrome would have been a no-no. They had to be good looking, right? They had to have good looks. They had to be intelligent. They had to be understanding, and they had to have the understanding and discerning knowledge. And they also had to have the ability to serve in the king's court. It's kind of like picking sides at an elementary school for a kickball game or a dodgeball game, right? Really, think about back in elementary school when you went and chose sides for dodgeball, right? We all chose the ones who could actually have the ability, well, you know he's good, and No, absolutely. Let the other team have him. And we would decide whether or not we wanted the first pick based on whether or not we would get the last pick and he would be on our team. Nebuchadnezzar did the same thing. Nebuchadnezzar picked on worldly standards. Okay? Nebuchadnezzar picked based on a worldly standard. The problem is that God chooses people differently. God does not use conventional things. God looks at the heart, aka humility and submission. He chooses people based on whom he knows who will choose him. We have a responsibility to choose God. And I would even venture to say that's a daily choice. It isn't just one choice coming up an aisle one time. It is a daily choice to choose God. One of the other things in here that we miss is we don't have any clue who Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah are. We always say Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It's actually Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or their Chaldean names, Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Abednego. The emphasis on the bed. Abednego. That is the four guys. And we all know Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from later on in Daniel, right? Where they're thrown in the furnace. Daniel, Belteshazzar, is chosen to serve. All four of them are actually chosen to serve in the king's court. Verse 8. But Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. Now God granted Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the commander of the officials, and the commander of the officials said to Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking more haggard than the youths who are your own age? Then you would make me forfeit my head to the king. But Daniel said to the overseer, whom the commander of the officials had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given some vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then let our appearance be observed in your presence and the appearance of the youths who are eating the king's choice food, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, their appearance seemed to be better, and they were fatter than all the youths who had been eating the king's choice food. So the overseer continued to withhold their choice food and the wine they were to drink, and kept giving them vegetables. As for these four youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. Then at the end of days, which the king had specified for presenting them, the commander of the officials presented them before Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and out of them all not one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's personal service. As for every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king consulted them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and the conjurers who were in all his realm. And Daniel continued until the first year of Cyrus the king. Daniel was in the service of the king for the better part of 60 plus years. Roughly 60 years. Maybe a little shy of 60 years. Daniel chose to live by faith in the Lord. He chose to live by God. He chose God. We go through here and Daniel's like, I'm not going to defile myself with that stuff you call food. I'm going to pass on that. And the chief who was appointed the commander, he was like, Daniel, you're going to make me forfeit my head. Nebuchadnezzar's going to cut my head off because I'm not giving you the food that you should be given, and y'all are going to look like a bunch of ragamuffins, and I'm going to get in trouble for it. And Daniel's like, no. He's like, no. Give us some vegetables to eat and some water to drink. Okay? Paraphrase, my paraphrase here. Give us some vegetables to eat and water to drink. And compare us at the end of 10 days and see if we are not in better shape than the rest of them. God granted favor to Daniel. They were tested for 10 days, and after that, they were indeed found to be in better shape than the rest of them. God blessed them with knowledge and intelligence in literature and wisdom. And Daniel also, in addition to this, Daniel himself understood visions and dreams. This is going to come into play in chapters 2 and 3, I think. 2 and 3, I think. Oh, and chapter 5. It comes into play a lot, especially in 7 to 12, the rest of the book of Daniel. But here's the warning on this. God chooses based on different qualifications, but the things that happen to Daniel aren't a standard across the board. Health and wealth gospel preachers tend to make this, oh, God's going to bless you, and you choose him, he's going to bless you, and you're going to be healthy and wealthy. No. God can, but he's not obligated to, nor does he always. Okay? Doesn't always happen like this. But the king found Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah 10 times better than the rest of the magicians and the conjurers. Why is that? Because they chose God. Daniel served until roughly 539, 538 BC. If he was taken captive in 597, that puts it right at 59 years. 59 years he was in the service of whoever the leader of Babylon was. So here is where we go with all of this. Do you battle self-confidence? Do you battle defects? Because let me tell you what. Defects are much more common nowadays than they were. Not because we have technology, not because we have the ability, we do. But it's because the gene pool is becoming more and more polluted, away from the gene pool in the Garden of Eden. Humankind is ever more losing its perfection. We are losing information. We are not gaining information. Do you battle your looks? Do you think that your self-confidence? Do you think you're not good looking? Do you think you're not intelligent? You know what? This book is just more than I can possibly understand. I just don't get it. So you don't even pick it up because you don't think that you're able to understand it. Let me tell you what, that is a lie from the pits of hell. Because you do have the ability to understand this. You have the ability to understand this because if you're a baptized believer, you have the Holy Spirit to read with you. You have everything you need. You don't need an education because last time I checked, none of the 11 had a college Bible degree. They were fishermen. Uneducated men. And yet Peter, 1st and 2nd Peter, are some of the most profound books. Do you battle knowledge or maybe your own ability? Living in Babylon, we need to understand that the world is going to they are going to continue to choose based on these things. Why do you think that abortions are legal? Why do you think people do genetic testing before a baby is born? And that it's okay to abort the baby if it has a defect that you don't want to deal with? It's godlessness. It's godlessness. People who disagree with the world are canceled these days. You don't agree with us, we're canceling you out. They tried to do it to Lauren Daigle. She stood up and actually held an outdoor concert, a worship concert, and the cancel culture tried to cancel her from New Year's Eve this New Year's Eve from performing there. I don't know whether they were successful or not. But if you continue to choose God, the world is going to try and cancel you out. Because you dare to stand against them and actually stand for something of a biblical principle. This is not going to go away. This is going to get worse. And we need to be very well aware that we need to get our focus off of the world and onto the Word of God. It is going to happen more and more when we do nothing but pay attention to the news, the media, the politics, and all of the divisiveness in this country. And I don't care. I don't care what side you stand on, whether it's the liberal left or the conservative right. I believe they are both being controlled by the same people, and the same people want nothing but control, and they are manipulating both sides so that they fight with each other so that they can have the control. I don't sugarcoat things. I tell it like I see it. And I'm telling you, if your focus is on the wrong things, you're going to be carried away. Your focus, I'm telling you, needs to be this book right here. If your focus is here and not on the worldly stuff, yeah, I'm not saying you don't need to keep up with what's going on in the world. That's just irresponsible. But I don't put stock in it. You put stock in this Word of God, and you put your stock in the Lord, and you're not going to care what happens. Because I've got the Lord, and my citizenship is of a greater kingdom than that which is here, which is actually the sermon for next week, as a matter of fact. The sermon for next week is indeed greater kingdom in chapter 2. The big idea this morning, God chooses differently. He does not choose using a conventional method. He doesn't use conventional things and worldly ideas to choose people. God looks at the heart. God looks at the heart, and he chooses those whom he knows will choose him. We can go into a whole predestination bit, and we can talk Calvinism and Arminianism, and we can kind of go all that different direction. But nonetheless, no matter what side you ride, that is the heart of the matter, is the fact that God chooses people who choose him. God chooses people who choose him. And in a culture that is ever more a Babylonian culture, we have got to be more aware of our everyday choice to choose God. Where are you at this morning? I know that 2020 has been an upside down year. It really has. But I was commenting on one of my professor's posts last night. He was basically kind of asking was it good or bad, and I said, it depends on how you look at things. Sherry really did say it in the call to worship this morning. You can focus on the bad, but I'm telling you, there has been some good that has come out of this year. It has helped Sherry and I streamline what we do and how we do it. Because we're just too doggone busy. We need to streamline stuff, and we need to do a better job at prioritizing and organizing things. It has shown us that family really is much more important It has shown us that simplicity really is a great thing. And it has shown us that God's way really is a better way.